Be Still, My Love is the second of three murder mysteries written by June Truesdell. It was published in 1947. There were plans to make it into a movie that year, but actress Barbara Stanwyck dropped out of the project because, quote, the script was too stupid to shoot, end quote. I had similar thoughts when I got to the ending. Here's the mystery solution. The police realize the culprit is female because she thinks men's swimming trunks get tied in the back. A man would know they get tied in the front. Also, anyone who's ever used a belt would know pants are tied in the front. Anyone who's worn pants, or clothing in general, should probably know tags go in the back, the other side is the front. And this scene takes place on a beach, so even if the killer had never seen men's swim trunks before, she would have been able to figure it out.
Argo Funk Book Review, Argo Funk Book Review.
Before I start my summary of the book, I want to say it's a book for adults. It's not appropriate for children. The book has adult situations, specifically sexual content, non-consensual sexual content, which makes it even worse. Our main character is Dr. Wilma Tuttle, a timid and naive professor of criminal psychology. She's terrified of everything and exhausted by keeping up the illusion that she's in control. The book spends most of its time telling us her thoughts and psychoanalyzing her, with special emphasis on her conditioned behaviors. During a final exam, an arrogant student named Frank Parry sexually harasses Dr. Wilma. He talks about how much he wants to kiss her, and he gets a thrill over how much that repulses her. This guy is just a monster. I would like to think that if the book was written today, Frank would immediately be kicked out of the university, and the story would end here at chapter 1. Yeah, they start the book with sexual harassment. A terrible way to start. Well, Wilma decides she's not going to tell anybody, and she thinks he's right. She agonizes over the fact that she's never truly lived before, because she's an introvert, and the book thinks introverts are all doomed to lives of sad loneliness. 2 weeks later, Frank reappears and apologizes for his behavior. He convinces Wilma to get dinner with him. Wilma is both terrified and thrilled because she's never been on a date before. The book doesn't even consider the fact that it's inappropriate for a professor to date a student. The closest we get to that is Wilma's worry that he's 7 years younger than her, which she quickly dismisses. The bad situation only gets worse when he takes her to a secluded cliffside so he can rape her. She fights back, she grabs a steel bar, smashes him on the head, he dies instantly. She decides to fake his death as an accident. She dresses him in full swim gear and pushes his body off the cliff into the ocean below. She cleans the car of fingerprints using her ripped blouse. This proves to be a mistake. She should have only gotten rid of her fingerprints, not every fingerprint on the car. Because when the police see there's no fingerprints here, they realize it was a murder. At this point, Wilma realizes she didn't have to cover up the murder. She killed him in self-defense. But now that she's disposed of the body, she figures it's too late to reveal the truth. Wilma feels panicked and liberated at the same time. She gets a ride home from a truck driver, she lies to her landlady about where she was, and she checks the news anxiously. Chapter 7 is weird. Wilma decides to buy clothes, but she acts like she's never shopped before. She wanders around the mall, confused as to what you do. She gets pushed around by saleswomen, one of whom is modeling revealing negligees. Wilma is rescued by a student named Connie Bradlett. Connie is Frank's girlfriend. Wilma doesn't like Connie. She panics and tries to get away from Connie. I guess Connie doesn't pick up on this because she decides Wilma's her favorite professor. Connie visits Wilma regularly and confides all her troubles to her. Connie especially likes to talk about Frank. That creates a lot of dramatic irony. Frank's corpse is found. Homicide Captain Goen is obsessed with finding the culprit. His investigation partner is Frank's family lawyer, Warren Ford. Warren says 3 years ago, Frank impregnated a waitress. Warren paid off the woman into keeping quiet. I immediately disliked Warren, because he is introduced here as the guy who covers up the victim's misdeeds. That's a big problem with the book. Readers are supposed to like Warren because he's the love interest. Warren consults with Wilma because she's a criminal psychologist. They go on a date, and it's a wonderful evening. He hates to ruin it with talk of murder. Gowen is less kind. He purposely gets Wilma upset, which tricks her into revealing Connie is a prime suspect. Connie was the last person to see Frank alive. Wilma cries and she kisses Warren. He is kind when she gets drunk for the first time. He says she should have learned about alcohol when she was 16, and he promises to help her grow into an adult. I'm glad he's so nice to her, but thinking of his girlfriend as a young child is really creepy for a relationship. Wilma blossoms into womanhood. At the same time, Connie starts to regress into immaturity. Connie becomes hysterical when the police question her, and she talks about Frank's bad sexual conduct in regards to her because he was a monster who was terrible to all women. Wilma and Warren grow deeper in love with each other. His love makes her into a new woman, and she feels like she was waiting her whole life for him to come along. On his birthday, he asks her to marry him, and she says yes. Captain Gowen interrupts the happy night. Gowen reviews the case. Wilma contradicts him whenever he gets something wrong. For example, he says the murder took place at 5. She corrects him and says, no, it took place at 11:30. I don't know why Wilma does this, and neither does she. Wilma is the murderer. If she doesn't want to get caught, she shouldn't reveal to the police that she knows all the details of the crime. Gowen finds the truck driver who took Wilma home on the night of the murder. The driver completely misremembers the night. He thinks the killer is a tall, dark Mexican woman. Again, Wilma tells the truth of the murder by contradicting every one of the driver's points. Wilma and Warren make plans for the future and they go to the beach. That's where she accidentally reveals herself as the murderer by saying men's swim trunks are tied in the back. Gowen wants more evidence, so he makes a model of the murder scene. Without thinking about it, Wilma takes all of the models and rearranges them so they perfectly match the way the crime scene looked. This proves she knows what the crime scene looked like. Either that, or she's a really good guesser. Wilma starts crying, and Warren orders her, "Be still, my love." The last chapter is Wilma trying not to panic as her murder trial starts. I think it's safe to assume she'll be found innocent because the state charges her with premeditated first-degree murder, and the murder wasn't premeditated, it was clearly self-defense. The end. Post-book follow-up. I did not like this book. Frank is so terrible, he should not be called the victim in this situation. I didn't like Wilma either. She's interesting at points, but a psychoanalysis into her personality is not strong enough to carry an entire book. We spend so much time in her head, readers quickly learn to dislike her. In general, I preferred the parts where she was portrayed as the victim over the parts where she's portrayed as the murderer. The book would be improved if it went all in on the idea that she's a helpless victim of circumstance. Portraying her as a murderer who's trying to frame Connie didn't work well, in part because she's an incompetent murderer who keeps giving herself away to the police for no reason. Wilma's romance with Warren was okay, although in order to make it work, the book has to actively ignore the fact he's trying to arrest her for murder. The book accomplishes this by making Gowen shoulder most of the investigation, and that works. I feel bad for Connie. She's being framed for her boyfriend's murder by her professor. The lead investigator doesn't believe Connie because he's dating the real culprit. It's a pretty dramatic setup. I wish Connie had been the main character. A movie called The Accused was released in 1949. The Harlequin reprint of this novel was done in 1950. I'm surprised they didn't reprint the book under the movie's title. It wouldn't have been the first time they reprinted a book with a different title. Overall, I wouldn't recommend this book. It is a bad mystery. All the stuff with rape is hard to stomach, and the psychological angle isn't good. I give Harlequin number 39, Be Still, My Love, a 1 out of 10.